A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. On that day, Jesus went out of the house and sat down by the sea. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat down, and the whole crowd stood along the shore. And he spoke to them at length in parables, saying, A sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seed fell on the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some seed fell on rocky ground where it had little soil. It sprang up at once because the soil was not deep, and then the sun rose, and it was scorched, and it withered for lack of roots. Some seed fell among the thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it. But some seed fell on rich soil and produced fruit 100 or 60 or 30-fold. Whoever has ears ought to hear. The gospel of the Lord. Falling on good soil, it produced 100-fold. It thrived. You got a fast car. I want a ticket to anywhere. Maybe we make a deal. Maybe together we can get somewhere, any place better. Starting from zero, got nothing to lose. Maybe we'll make something, me, myself. I got nothing to prove. Those are the lyrics of actually a pretty old Tracy Chapman song. It actually was, I think, put out in 1988. And I remember that song, Fast Car. It's sort of a song about a young person's fascination with something like a great car, a fast car, but also that a desire that maybe it would take you somewhere and take you out and put you out there in a new place to get somewhere else fast, in the fast car, the great car. Well, that song, interestingly enough, not long ago, hit number one on the country charts. Yeah, that's right. Tracy Chapman is not somebody who shows up on the country charts back when she was singing, and certainly not at this point in her career. But there's a young artist by the name of Luke Combs who covered that song exactly as Tracy Chapman had written it. And he put it out there as a country song because he's a country singer, and it hit the top of the country charts, and I think it's floating around number 2 or number 3 on the pop charts right now. Obviously the song speaks to us in some way, and interestingly enough, it speaks maybe to a new generation in a new time. Tracy Chapman has become, interestingly enough, the first African-American woman to have a song on the top of the country charts. Partly because of this recover by Luke Combs and his putting it there. And she's also, I think, earning a nice little bonus, probably an unexpected bonus at this point in her life from that old song, Fast Car. Well, getting out of here fast, having freedom. This midsummer's point in these really serious dog days of summer across most of the nation, where we're experiencing some of the hottest days recorded on the planet since we started to record. 1/3 of the planet, for example, right now is under a heat alert, if you can imagine. And so we might want to get out of this or get out of here or get someplace cooler or someplace better. In some ways, that quick desire to want to go and fix something or be somewhere else might be exactly the desire we need to kind of back away from, because today's gospel, I think, is suggesting to you and to me that we consider that instead of getting out of a situation, that instead, I think the gospel is suggesting you and I should be grounded a little more, planted in a way that allows us to enjoy the slow growth of our good effort and God's grace nourishing us. This parable that Jesus tells his followers of the seed is not a bad one for us to consider how grace works in our lives. That at times we sometimes are making our efforts forth, and we sometimes do things that are a little superficial. They're in kind of, you might say, shallow ground, and something comes along and it withers up and it comes to naught. But probably not the worst experiences or completely fruitless, but we learn from those experiences. Or there's the way in which it's rocky ground, where we thought, well, this may not grow much, but let's try. And we try and we make good effort. But every once in a while, and in fact I would argue pretty frequently, God gives us the grace to be able to say that our efforts are planted in good soil, And if we give them time and have patience with God's grace working on us in that effort, it'll get rooted and it'll take off and it'll grow something. You and I are slow growers, so to speak. We are people who don't necessarily mature as fast as we'd like to think we do. We're in some ways, often enough, at least spiritually and sometimes even emotionally, a little delayed in our maturity and growth, where we take a while to gain wisdom, and when we come to know who we really are and get that sense of ourselves that we can in fact be more judicious and prudent and even, as I said, wise to be able to make good decisions in our lives and let God's grace lead us to where we can be our better selves and where we can engage in efforts that allow us to understand more clearly what is the good fruit that we're to produce in this life, in this effort, at this time in our lives. And so the parable that Jesus, I think, gives us is one that says we're looking not for that quick and fast solution to go somewhere else and just give up, but instead to plant ourselves right here where we are and how we are, wherever we are, and to be able to let maybe God's grace let things work in a deeper way so that we can maybe set deeper roots. There's an old Spanish proverb that para crecer un niño tú necesitas darle raíces y alas, right? That in order to raise a child, you got to make sure that they have wings to fly and roots to be grounded, both and. And you and I may be in that situation where we're looking, inspired by this gospel, for God's grace to give us a little rootedness, especially in these days when things may seem like they're changing too fast, where the planet is moving in some new direction and we're a little bit overwhelmed by such kind of news. That you and I know that our lives, with God's grace, can allow us to be grounded. We can be deeply rooted in a faith that God gives us so that we can live our lives in a full and complete way. So as much as we would like to maybe find that enticing fast car that Tracy Chapman sings about to get us to a new place, you and I nonetheless know that God is always giving us the grace that nurtures us to have a deep-rooted faith and a sense of self that allows us to grow maybe slowly, but nonetheless progressively and seriously into the persons that God is asking you and I to be and giving us the grace to get there. Amen.